Good morning. Welcome to DeepSec 2021. We are glad that we've managed to stage an on-site conference because last year we missed meeting each other in the hallway and between tracks. To recap what happened last year, for those of you who didn't attend, we went fully virtual in order to give you some information security news. It wasn't quite easy because we couldn't meet, and this cartoon illustrates how 2020 looked like. 2021 looks a bit better, but as you have seen from the pandemic and other discussions, getting facts out and convincing people that things need to be acted upon is not easy. It depends on the field of science. Computer science doesn't show up in XKCD's cartoon about the different fields of science and the message they have. When it comes to astrophysics or pandemics or volcanoes, people usually listen. Maybe you see that information security and computer science isn't listed. If someone gives an interview about computer science problems and information security, people think doesn't care, it doesn't matter. But this is different because digitalization has entered many fields, and this is why we wanted to stage DeepSec with all of you during this week. And I have some dates for you because I don't want to keep you from watching the keynote. We organized dates for next year. You see, these are the dates for DeepSec 2022. The dates are fixed, so we will have a DeepSec again next year. We will have a Deep Intel next year, our Security Intelligence Conference. We plan to bring together law experts and IT security experts in April. This will be a small conference where we try to connect people from the computer science and IT security world and from law. The focus will be on German-speaking countries because maybe if you followed our blog, if you followed the discussion about end-to-end encryption and copying messages, messenger content, you may have noticed that there are some regulations in preparation which may compromise the security of devices used for communication. This is something we want to address at this conference. We will update our event page after the conference. All the dates you see there are collected on deepsec.events. Unfortunately, we started our events website last year where people were canceling all of the events. So you will get an updated version with Monday. But I won't keep you from listening to the keynote. I hope you enjoy DeepSec. I hope you find new insights you can exchange with colleagues and maybe improve your defense. So I wish you a pleasant conference. Enjoy meeting each other, and thanks for listening. Okay. So, I welcome Professor Kotsis. We are keen to listen to your keynote, so please.
Yes, thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers very much for giving me this opportunity to talk to a community which honestly is not in my core field of research, but which of course is very relevant for my research. So my background is in parallel distributed systems, cooperative systems, and as you have said in the introduction, now with the pandemic, we are all dealing with this kind of cooperative systems, and security still is very important in this field. So therefore, I'm pleased to share some of my views and visions for the future of computing with you and hope to engage a lively discussion. I would like to talk in my presentation about some visions that I have been thinking about this for several years,
And basically the core idea would be, what do we expect from future technologies? We do see a trend that artificial intelligence is becoming a very powerful tool. It can solve a lot of problems. It also creates vision for the people, and it also creates some fears. And in my talk, I would like to discuss some of the pros and cons, or maybe utopias, dystopias that come with this kind of vision. So it will not be a very technical talk, but I hope an inspiring talk for future discussions and ideas. I've chosen the title Intelligence, Smartness, Emotions, because these are things, characteristics that we usually associate with humans. But at least for intelligence, we may say, as I will show in my talk, that computers have gone already a long path towards becoming human-like, so to say. Maybe a little bit also on my personal background. I'm a professor at Johannes Kepler University in Linz. So the background that you see here is the Science Park building. This is where my office is in. But due to the bad numbers in Upper Austria, I decided to give this talk remotely and to stay and not come to Vienna to join you in person.
Moderieren? Soll der Session?
So, let me start with looking into how computers looked like in the past and what was the main function of computing machinery in the past. And being in Austria, of course, it's more or less mandatory to quote one of the first supercomputers that actually has been produced in Austria. Some of you might know the Mailüftel. Mailüftel was a supercomputer which was invented and built by the Austrian computing pioneer Heinz Zemanek. And he called it Mailüftel, which translates into something like a soft wind in spring, in May, a very warm wind, but still a wind. So it's creating some effect. And he was chosen this name because other more powerful supercomputers at that time were called whirlwinds. So he said, mine will not be a whirlwind, but at least I will be able to produce a Mailüftel. And you can see here the huge machinery in the background. And of course, compared to today's standards, the computing power was small, but still at that time, computers were mainly used for crunching numbers. So we would see at that time in the past, computers as machines that are able to process data. And typically they were able to produce those data or process those data quickly and correctly. So these were the main qualitative criteria about computers, being fast and doing the computations in a correct way. And we still see this nowadays because we teach our students to produce correct code. We teach our students to produce fast code, and we still measure supercomputers by means of speed. And speed as a measure typically for computers is measured in operations per second, as you all know. So this was the past. Let's have a look about where we are now. Well, we have seen many, many trends, and I really try to capture this now in one very simplifying image to characterize the presence. First of all, you see computers became much smaller. All of us now have our desktop computers, our mobile computers, our mobile phones, which are actually computers. And I, on purpose, depicted this figure now in black because we already now see a tendency of disappearing computers. Computers are embedded everywhere in everyday objects, and we don't even notice that they are computers anymore. Seen from the computer side, still they are processing data. For the computer, still all they can do is processing zeros and ones at a very high speed. But now we are able of producing computers as machines that are able to unfold the thinking condensed into algorithms. So we have developed very advanced programming languages that allow us to teach the computer, to learn the computer, to behave in an even human-like way, and to do much more than just pure data processing. But still, it's more or less us, the humans, telling the machines what to do, and we are still, in most of the cases, in control. But we already do see the next step of computing. And in the next step, we would see computers that more or less also have a look and feel that are more human-like and that take initiative on their own. So we already now have a lot of computer programs. They are still initially programmed by a human, but they take the initiative. They ask the user what the users would like to do and to achieve. So computers are becoming more proactive. They are taking the lead. And of course, this creates a little bit of concern among the general public, but also within the research community, because if computers take over the control, this might also be a dystopia, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. So what would be the future? Well, in the future, we will definitely see machines that are able to learn. This is already currently present. We can train computers, we can make computers that show some learning behavior. There is still a debate about computers are able to really think. They are definitely able to reason, and we will discuss also in this talk a little bit about what does it mean. Are they truly already intelligent? And they are maybe already at the border of having other human-like features, characteristics like feelings. Of course, they are still programmed by humans, but we can mimic computers to act as they would understand the human. So all those are very human-like characteristics. And the question arises, how would be the future interaction among humans and machines? The standard human-computer interaction is definitely going to change. And I would like to discuss this. So let's look now into the individual aspects, into the individual terms in more detail. If we look, for example, into intelligence, then if we look up a dictionary, this means the ability to learn, understand, make judgments, or have opinions that are based on reason. And if we take this definition, then we would say, yes, computers have reached that level, at least to the extent that they are able to learn. They can make judgments that are based on reason. I would still be skeptical about really talking about understanding, because computers don't really have an understanding in our human sense, and they also don't really have opinions. We can train them to show something that is like an opinion, but still those very human-like functions are missing. And I told you that this is the future, but actually it's also here worth looking into the past. What have humans tried to bring into computers as intelligence? And I would like to start with a science fiction movie, because science fiction movies are usually a very good source of inspiration about what the future could look like. And they're also usually very beautiful examples. And the first example that I would like to borrow from a science fiction movie is from Space Odyssey, a movie from 1968 by Stanley Kubrick. Maybe some of you have seen this movie. And in that movie, there was a computer that was truly exhibiting human intelligence. It was the HAL 9000. You see here a picture of the computer, and you could really communicate with the computer, of course, in natural language. The computer would respond to you, and you could even discuss philosophical questions with this computer. So, of course, we are far away from that, but this was a vision, and it's still somehow apparently a desire for humans to create such artifacts that are very human-like. I can go back even further into history, into literature. Just think about all those many figures that have been presented in literature where humans tried to build human-like things from clay, for example. Just think about the golem, or from dead bodies. Think about the Frankenstein story. So apparently there's an urgent feeling within humans that try to recreate themselves from other kind of materials, objects, and build what they are, or build a remodel of what they are. But we don't only have to look into science fiction movies. There are many other examples where humans have tried to build machines that at the end are able to be better than humans. And the next example that I would like to present to you is a little bit younger in the history. It's from 1997, where for the first time, a computer chess player or a computer chess program was beating one of the world experts in chess. You probably also heard about this story. It was Garry Kasparov versus IBM Blue Gene. And actually, it was not just one single tournament, but it was a series of several tournaments. The first one was held in 1996. And in this first one, Kasparov won. So this was a big drawback, so to say, for the computing society, because they were having high expectations that the computer would be able to beat a human, but it was not the case. It was the case actually in the next game that they played early in 1997. And this was the first time that a computer won against a professional chess player in a tournament. But you can now say, okay, well, chess has very standardized rules that can be learned, that can be understood. And if you're able to predict in advance the next possible moves, then it's quite reasonable that still this type of number crunching computer can become very good in chess if it's just powerful enough. Of course, the computer could also learn strategic elements, could be trained on famous chess games, so that the computer would be able to predict meaningful potential moves, but still you can imagine that a computer can become very good at that. Another breakthrough, I would say, was nearly 15 years later in 2011, where a computer was winning a very different game, namely the game Jeopardy. You know the game Jeopardy, it's a quiz game, and in this quiz game, the people playing it would be posed to sentences or statements, and they would have to guess the corresponding questions. So it's not just you are asked a question and you have to give the answer, or you have 4 choices of answer like in the millionaire game, but in Jeopardy, really a more deeper understanding of the language is necessary in order to understand the statement and to derive possible questions that would correspond to this statement given as an answer. So this is really something where I would say in 1997, no computer scientist would have thought of that a machine would be able to do so. But with the advances in natural language processing, in artificial intelligence, but also in processing even larger amounts of data, because the computer would have to build up a huge knowledge base about the facts that are available worldwide, more or less, this becomes a real vision. And the supercomputer that was playing here at that time was again a machine built by IBM. I'm not doing any advertisement, but they really had good progress there. And at the beginning, also in Jeopardy, they were playing several rounds, and it was not that clear if the computer would really be able to win, because it's not only answering the questions correctly or giving the correct questions to the answers that are given, but also choosing the right questions. If you know the game, then you know it's played in several categories, and for questions at different levels of different difficulty levels, you would get different scores, and some hidden questions would give you a double score. So there's already a little bit more of strategy in the game. And actually it turned out that after several rounds, as you can see here, the computer was beating one of the best Jeopardy players in the world in this competition. I have to say that the computer was a little bit lucky, because he was actually able to detect one of those fields where he would get double points, and that's the reason why the win was so clear. You can see the amount that was won, it is given in money. But it really shows that computers have come very far. Now you can say, can you really call this an intelligent computer? And again, I would argue no, because this computer has been specially trained to play this game. Of course, you can use such a type of computer to do similar things, but still what this computer can do and what this computer is good at is processing large amounts of information, communicating in natural language, and behaving like a human in this specific game. But if you would show this computer a completely different task, the computer would fail because it has not been trained to do so. So nowadays, I would say we are at a level that we can train computers to a level where they show human-like intelligence, but we are still far away from really this full set of options that we as human beings can do. And I may say so that this is good. Let's come to another term, which is smartness. We nowadays see a lot of devices that are called smart. We're talking about smart meters. We're talking about smart watches. Why would we call them smart? Well, let's again look at the definition of smartness. It's defined as the quality of being intelligent or able to think quickly or intelligently in difficult situations. So the thing that is coming in here is that the computer is aware of the situation. In computer science, of course, we call this the context that the system is working in, and able to put the actions that the computer is doing in the appropriate context. So for the example of the smart meter, the context would not only be the energy consumption of the various devices, but also the time of the day, the period of the year, so that the computer, in that case the smart meter, could suggest that it's now a good idea to wash your laundry, or for example, if you have a solar power plant on your own home, that you probably wait for the next sunny day, which is expected to come tomorrow morning. So there's already a little bit of smartness with respect to that definition, namely supporting the user doing actions in difficult situations. The smartwatch is another example. There are various functions built in, and there are now more sensors available to learn about the situation, to learn about the context. So for example, again, the smartwatch would know, of course, the day and the time of the day, and also the time within the year, but it would also be able to measure your own activity. There would be, for example, sensors that can measure your movement. There would be sensors that even can capture some of your body functions, like your pulse or your skin resistance. And based on that, the watch could again suggest appropriate measures. So maybe some of you have those watches. They are sometimes also available in a more simple way of just a pure fitness tracker. And if you have been sitting in the conference for 3 hours listening to talks, then of course your fitness tracker or your smartwatch would alert you and tell you it's time to move. So get up, do some exercise and do something. So again, we can call this really smartness. And there are several other examples. I have a vacuum cleaner that could be considered smart. Well, actually, I would consider it rather dumb, but it has, again, awareness about the situation. It is able, while cleaning, to take a map of the room and to see which areas have been covered yet and which areas have not been covered yet. And at the end of the task, the computer would show me a short report, would show me the map and show me the regions where it was able to clean and where it was not able to clean because there might have been obstacles, because it has a certain size and therefore it cannot go into the very small niches. And this helps me as a user then to clean the remaining spots. If you watch the computer, you would not really call it smart, because it's rather running around more or less randomly. It doesn't really have a clear strategy, it's not optimizing its path. Really, the task is cleaning the floor, irrespective of how long it takes. And there are mowing machines which do the same job. And actually, rather than smartness, I would rather call my vacuum cleaner emotional, because of course, it's just a stupid user perception, but whenever you are in the room, you have the feeling that the computer, or the robot in that case, the vacuum cleaner robot, is immediately trying to approach to you. So it's seemingly having some kind of affection. Of course, this is not true, and I don't know how it is programmed so that this behavior really can be proven. Maybe the reason is that some new obstacle, some new object is attractive and need to be recognized because of this cartography function that the computer has been built in. Another example would be smart cars, and allow me for this short joke of showing a smart car. But really the meaning of a smart car, of course, is a car that again has a lot of computer built in as assistive technologies. Actually, no car today is not a smart car, no modern car, because they all have built in, for example, those anti-blocking systems. If you push the brake, then the system is computing the conditions and seeing how to transform your command of braking to the different wheels and how to best do this. There are sensors that can measure the distance. There are sensors that can measure if you're on track. We are going towards semi-autonomous or autonomous driving, where there are even a lot more smartness functions within the car. And also, if we are talking about semi-autonomous or autonomous driving, we are coming into fields where the car would also need to consider you as the driver as context and situation that has to be considered. I have some research colleagues who are doing research there in Salzburg located, who are doing special research about human-to-car interaction and human-to-car communication. So this is a whole new field of research that is coming up and quite interesting. And last but not least, I would like to show you an example that I found personally quite interesting. This would be the smart trolley for children. And you would ask, how could this device be smart? Well, actually, the smartness here also is in the wheels. So the difficult situation here for the trolley is to ride over bumpy roads. If you're riding with your baby over bumpy roads, then of course you would like to avoid that the baby whoop, whoop, whoop is shaking up and down. And this is not comfortable for the baby, and maybe there's also a health risk associated to that. So what you try as a human being is you try to drive very carefully and try to compensate the bumpiness of the road. And this compensation in the smart trolley is done by the trolley. So there are sensors in the connection of the wheels detecting bumps. And there is a mechanism that can now eliminate or try to eliminate those bumps so that the actual trolley is moving more smoothly and all the movements are compensated by means of the system of the wheels. So this is another example of a smart tool. But as I said before, we would like to go beyond intelligence, beyond smartness. And there are several research initiatives that try to bring emotions into computers. And this has two sides. On the one hand, there are efforts that try to understand human emotions in order to react correspondingly. And on the other hand, there are efforts that try to have computers appear to a human being as they would have emotions and would understand the user. And again, let's first look into the dictionary. What is emotion? It's the strong feeling such as love or anger or strong feelings in general. So it's feelings. It's really something that is not technical, that is very difficult to capture, to measure, to model. But again, if you look into history, there are already famous examples where this has been achieved in a very successful way. And they can already go back to 1966, where another computer pioneer, Joe Weizenbaum, invented the computer program ELIZA. And ELIZA was a text-based system. At that time, it was a command-based system, so understanding spoken language was a very difficult task, but understanding written language, analyzing the syntax of written language was quite feasible at that days. So what would the system do? Well, the system would start a dialogue with the user, introducing itself. Hello, I'm Eliza. And then the user is answering with a statement about his or her emotional status. So for example, the user would respond, I'm afraid. And then the computer would not really have a big understanding about humans and emotions. There would, of course, be some kind of logic system, some kind of taxonomy in the background, but mainly the computer was analyzing the syntax and trying to ask questions like a human psychiatrist would do in order to help the user, giving more information and talking to the machine. So in that example that you see here, the computer would answer, how long have you been afraid? And then the computer answers, since midterms, which is not very illustrative for the computer. So the computer is asking, tell me more. And then I'm afraid that I will fail the course. And then, of course, you see here that this is also a failure of the computer because the computer didn't really understand the meaning, the semantics. It understood the syntax, but it was asking, do you enjoy being afraid that you will fail your course? And asking, do you enjoy being afraid is maybe a little bit strange. But nevertheless, you know this experiment maybe as well. Humans forgot that they are talking to the computer. And there was an experiment that the majority of humans would not be able to detect whether they would be talking now to a human opponent who was mimicking the computer or to the computer itself. So this was a first very early example, very simple example still, but you could say that this simple computer program was able to mimic emotion, to present emotional reaction to the user. A more recent example, here are emoticons. I'm sure you're all using those kind of small icons. They started as simple ASCII character combinations, representing a smile or representing a sad with the brackets open and brackets closed signs. And from the 90s on, they have been used quite frequently in order to compensate the rather emotionless text that you have seen before. Because for the text, you don't really see the connotation. You don't really see the sentimental state of the user. You don't know if the user has a happy voice or a sad voice. You don't understand irony in written text. And therefore, emoticons would help the users in expressing their feelings in written text. So they're, of course, not to be used in spoken language, because in spoken language, you can use with your facial expressions and with your tone of the voice, you can compensate. But with emoticons, you can compensate this in non-verbal and textual communication or in non-spoken communication. And quite interestingly, those emoticons became very important, so that they were even embedded in the standard character set. We probably know that we are going now much way beyond ASCII character set. ASCII characters were just the simple letters and digits that you've seen on the previous slide. But nowadays, there are much more characters available that have a special meaning, and emoticons made it to the official Unicode worldwide character set. So you know, if you see this kind of emoticon, it has a certain code position, it's identified by a number. Again, this is important for the computer, because still, remember, we are in the 90s, computers only understand at the end numbers, only understand 0 and 1. So they don't understand that this is a happy smiley, that this is a cool smiley, or that this is a laughing smiley, but they knew the character code, and therefore they can represent the appropriate picture. But this is already an important starting point, because if the computer knows the character code, then the computer would also know that this sentence is now encoded with this special emotion. And if you build again a taxonomy, an ontology, a dictionary telling the users, okay, love relates to those kind of feelings or would expect those kind of reactions, then the computer now has much more information about the user intentions than in the previous examples. So if you rebuild now ELIZA, just allowing those emoticons and analyzing the emoticons, I think the behavior would be much better. And we are not at the end yet. This is going on. I was a couple of years ago the reviewer for a European-funded project where they tried to build emotional robots. The picture, the visualization that you see here is not from this project. This is from a research project in Japan, where they really tried to build in emotional expressions into the face of a robot. And you see here 3 different pictures, and one seems to be looking a little bit skeptical. The other one seems to be looking interested, paying attention to the user. And the last one, or the first one, actually, the one to the left, maybe has some kind of sad impression. So the focus of this Japanese research project was really to create an expression that would be recognized by the user with the corresponding emotion. The EU project that I was working in, or that I was reviewing, was dealing with the question of how could users capture the emotion from the human beings and react accordingly in a dialogue with the user. One of the examples was that, for example, the computer would represent a character from a novel, from a book. It was chosen as Alice in Wonderland, and Alice would guide the user through the book. So this could be used, for example, for students learning about literature, and they would be able to talk to the character. And this can be rather boring. If you have been talking to an agent, to a digital agent, which doesn't have feelings, you know that the question and answers are usually very simple. But by bringing in emotions, they were able to recognizing, okay, the user is now getting bored. So therefore the character needs to be more active, more engaging. The character would recognize if the user is not paying attention anymore, and all those things. And I think this is very promising research, actually having more human-like dialogue partners, which could be used in many different examples in learning, in education. Also in the example that I've shown before in the autonomous driving scenario. Of course, you don't want your car to say, okay, I understand you, and in the sense of the ELIZA program, but it would be very helpful if your car, for example, would recognize that you're getting tired And again, in modern car systems, those kind of recognition systems are already built in. So we have achieved quite a lot there as well. So summarizing, the conclusion for me is that we still do have a lot of aspects or behavior that humans are good at. We are creative, we have ambition, we are curious, we have sympathy, we have empathy, we are good at interpreting things, we can care about others, and last but not least, we can forget. So these are core human functions where we are still much better than machines. There is, of course, research in trying to make the machines more similar or show such a behavior, but I think, yes, this has a certain value, but should be restricted. The goal should not really be that we build a machine that is able to do all those things, because we are still humans and we can do those things. So the computers should still focus on what they are good at. They are still very good at number crunching. I just looked up the up-to-date figures, because in June and in November, twice a year, always the world's fastest supercomputers are presented. And the current fastest supercomputer is a machine from Japan and is being able to process numbers at an incredible speed of 442 petaflops. So this is incredibly much larger than any human processing power with respect to operations per second that can be performed. They are still good at storing and processing large amounts of data. They are very precise. They are good in repetitive behavior, and they are becoming even better in recognizing patterns, because all these machine learning techniques, these artificial intelligence techniques, are based on learning from the existing. And this works very well. Also, we as humans do learn from the existing, but we still have our creativity. We can still invent something completely new. We can deviate our thoughts, and machines are not very good at that yet. There are again approaches who try to build into machines a so-called glitch, a mistake on purpose, in order to identify something new and not being trapped into what has been done in the past. But again, this is also just research at the beginning. So what would be the conclusion? Bringing those two worlds together. And this is at least what my community is currently discussing at very actively and with a high level of interest and with a high level of effort. This is called human-machine teaming. Various actually communities contribute now to this field. It's the standard HCI community, it's the computer-supported cooperative work community, it's the community of artificial intelligence. Of course, we also need the security community and many, many others to really come up with meaningful systems. What's meant by human-machine teaming? Well, again, let me one more time borrow from science fiction movies. It could be science fiction, yes. There are many, many movies that talk about human-machine teaming, human-like machines, machine-like humans. And I've just presented here 3 examples, and I think I still have time to go through some of those examples. The first movie is called Surrogates. And again, I don't know if you have seen this movie. It's definitely worth seeing from a movie point of view, but also from a scientific point of view, because in Surrogates, the human beings do not act in the real world anymore. They rather sit at their small, tiny homes, living a rather dreadful life, and they can buy surrogates, digital counterparts, which are human-like robots that could be controlled by the human, and those are the ones who work and live in the outside world, that are shown to the outside world. And the story somehow tells you that although you as an individual might have very deficiencies, you might not be very beautiful, you might be weak, you might not be very strong. If you have enough money, you can buy you a surrogate that is very beautiful, that is very powerful. So there's also a little bit of a message in that movie, I would say. Just look at it. I'm not going to tell you more details. I'm just talking about this because this is a very special example of human-machine teaming, because the humans are building their own digital twin. Their humans are building their own digital or buying their own digital counterparts. I'm assuming most of you know the movie Avatar. And here the idea again was that a human would control an avatar, a virtual representation, in order to be able to survive in a different world, which is not meant for humans to be lived in. And again, you know the story, there was a lot of problems among humans and those extraterrestrial creatures. And yeah, again, I'm not going to spoil this if you're going to see the movie, but here also it was a human being embodied into a machine. The last movie that I frequently quote, because it really has a good, it is a good source of inspiration also for computer scientists, is the movie Matrix. And here the humans do no longer have a physical existence of their own. They are exploited by the machines. And this is the dystopia that I have mentioned at the beginning. In the movie Matrix, humans are no longer in control. The whole world is controlled by machines. And the only reason why humans are kept alive are for the purpose of producing energy for the machines to live, so to say, to exist. And you also know that then there's a revolution of the humans. And well, again, the plot, I'm not going to tell you the whole plot. But you see, human machines teaming can have good aspects, can have risky aspects, and we will see what the future will bring. Not only science fiction movie authors have been discussing this in the past, this aspect of human-machine teaming. I was listening to a talk by Nicolas Negroponte more than, well, nearly 20 years ago, I would say. In 1995, he was publishing a book, Being Digital. And in this book, he was creating the idea of a digital sister-in-law. And the idea again would be that you as humans have some digital counterpart, but it's not necessarily in terms of a robot. It could be a program resting on your computer or nowadays on your mobile phone, and it would act partly on your behalf. It would be your digital representative, but it's a digital sister-in-law. So this means it would be a person which is hopefully benevolent, which is on your side, which is your guide. So all those assistants that we see nowadays, like Siri, Alexa, whatsoever you call them, they are claiming to be on your side, but at the end, they are products. And therefore, they would like you to buy even more products. They create the buyers, they help you, yes, but they also have their own agenda, their programmed agenda. But Negroponte's sister-in-law really would only act on your behalf, protect you, protecting your privacy. And this was, I think, in my opinion, a great vision that has not been put into practice yet. Last but not least, two examples that have been put into practice yet for human-machine teaming, and now it's really machines that I'm talking about, manufacturing machines, machines doing other kind of things. And allow me to do a little bit of advertising for my own university, for Johannes Kepler University. Those are two examples coming from my university. The first one is a university spin-off, the company Ferrobotics. And the team or the motto of Ferrobotics is Der Klügere gibt nach, which means that the more smarter entity would step back. And they are marketing their products as intelligent robots, reactive robots, because typically when you see such robots that are depicted here in this figure, like arms, cranes in manufacturing plants, they are rather rigid. You can program them to perform a certain set of movements. You can program them to recognize obstacles and to avoid those obstacles, but the movements are still rather rigid. So if they are interacting with humans, there is a high risk of hitting the human, causing damage to the human, causing damage also to other obstacles as well. But of course, the human to robot interaction is the most critical one. So it's very important that those devices can feel resistance from the user and can react to this resistance. So for example, if there's a worker working with this machine, then the worker could move the arm and the arm would react to these movements, would allow the user to move it into another position, and then it would again do his rigid movements. So there's an interplay of the machine recognizing now it's the user, the human operating the machine, guiding me, and now it's me doing some kind of operations. And one example where those type of robots could be used are not only in manufacturing plants, but for example, also in physiotherapy. We do already now use machines in physiotherapy. I had a knee operation several years ago, and I had to use a machine, and all the machine would do would be my leg would be in this machine and would be bending my knee to a certain degree. And at that time it was rigid. So you would first need to say, okay, let's bend it up to 30 degrees, but the machine would not recognize if it's hurting me already. Machines created by robotics would notice this. So like a human physiotherapist that would bend your knee, the human physiotherapist would notice, okay, now there's a resistance. And it would also notice, okay, yes, that's a resistance, but I can break this resistance because it's not the pain level yet. So you can slowly progress to an even further angle. And the goal is, of course, to come to an angle of 90 or even more degrees in being able to bend your knee. And the human physicist can do this because of his or her experience. It would slowly move, massage again, slowly move. A stupid machine could not do this. It would be just rigid, either doing not enough or doing too much. And those robotic machines are smart, are intelligent in a sense that they recognize the human resistance. They would then go to a wider angle, then they would try again, and they would be able to react and mimic the human physical therapist in a very good way. And the last example is not just one company, but it's a consortium of several companies and research institutes, not only from Linz, but also from the Technical University in Graz. There's also a cooperation with the University of Vienna and some other universities worldwide, like, for example, Munich or the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And this center is called Pro2Future, Products and Production Systems of the Future. It's funded by the Austrian government in this framework program of the KEYNOTE competence centers. Those of you being in Austria know about those competence centers. They try to bring together research from academia and research from companies in order to make significant advances in specific thematic areas. So those competence centers are set up across various levels in the production chain, but also specialized in one special topic. And this topic here is products and production systems of the future. And again, it's a very similar idea to the spin-off of robotics, and actually the chief scientific officer of Pro2Future is also the PhD supervisor of the founder of robotics. So there's also a personal relation between those two entities. And here, again, the vision would be that products and also production systems are becoming smart, are becoming partners of humans. And they would have one showcase where, for example, a machine in a manufacturing plant could learn from an experienced user and could then translate what the machine has learned from the experienced users to a novice user in training this novice user. So with that, I think I'm nearly at the end of my talk. I would like to thank you very much for attending this talk and for listening to me. I hope you find one or the other inspiring aspect, and I would be available for questions either via email. I also have a Twitter account, and of course, maybe there's also time here for some questions. Thank you very much, and I wish you a very successful and inspiring remaining conference.
Thank you. Are there any questions or remarks to the keynote? One of you, maybe? Then I have a remark. I'm a long-time science fiction fan, and I like using science fictions as an example or as an illustration. The problem is most of the science fiction plots have already become documentaries. So I think sooner or later we might run out of ideas, and I told my students in a lecture a couple of weeks ago, information security requires to be creative, otherwise you will never catch new threats or find new defenses.
Yes, I fully agree to that. I also think that creativity and thinking sideways is a very human-like characteristic that we should not lose. And I'm a little bit concerned, because you're talking about our students, about the next generation, because if they're only following tweets on Twitter and TikTok and whatsoever, they are somehow into a narrow channel of perception, which really hinders, in my opinion, creativity. So I truly hope that we will be able to teach our students, to teach our kids to stay creative. I fully support that. Thank you.
There's a question?
Yes, hi. Thank you for your talk. If you see us experiencing computers as more human, do you expect we will treat computers as more human? For example, with training, do you expect us to incorporate more socialization?
Honestly, I think we already do. Just think about your mobile phone. It's becoming a very personal device, and you're blaming your mobile phone of doing something wrong, which is not true. So we are already impersonalizing technology. I think it's not really doing a harm if we do so, if we are aware of the fact. If we really start thinking that computers can understand and can feel, then it's becoming risky. As long as we are aware of the fact that this is just a machine and I still can turn it off, I think there is no risk. So I would not recommend that on purpose. We should treat computers like humans and interact with them. In my opinion, this is not the right interaction style, but rather still the machines should adapt to our behavior, not we should adapt to their behavior.
There's another question in the audience.
What would separate a digital sister-in-law from Siri or the Google Assistant? Is it that it anticipates your desires and acts for you, or that you that it
Yes, I would say it's mainly the intention, because really in Negroponte's vision, this is something which is truly on your side. And I would never be sure that Siri or Amazon are truly on my side. They are produced by big companies and they want to make money. They claim that they want to make my life better, but in fact, it's their business. So in my opinion, this is the main difference. It's really a business argument.
So if there are no more questions, thank you for your excellent keynote. I hope people will remember that and think of preserving creativity. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will now have the next